Hello and welcome to the dive presented by Honda, season 5, episode 2. Tried to trick me in the script here. It says number 1. It's not number 1.
He's too good for that.
Nice little test you got there. We've decided for
our producer just edited it to 2.
He's making you look crazy. I don't know what you're talking about. I see 2.
Yeah, it says 2 right there, Kobe. I don't know. I don't know what you're talking about. Nothing to see here.
So for people who don't know, we have a Google Doc and we all have access to it. So we can like write messages to each other sometimes where we're like, it's time to move on. Our producer's like, nothing to see here.
Actually just quickly highlighted it as I'm saying it. Regardless of episode 1 or 2, you know, I guess that's up for discussion. We've decided for this episode to steal one of the a segment that David Freak Turley decided to come up with. Isaac, would you please be the host of our new tradition, Cash or Trash, for week 1 of the lock-in tournament?
Freak introduced this when I was casting with him the other day, and it's obviously awful, but that kind of makes it great. I'm going to introduce a couple topics, and we got to decide, was it cash or is it trash? So Perkz,
simple game.
His first week in the LCS, cash or trash?
I think this might be one of the more difficult ones because
this is
after the first game, this would be easy. Boom, trash. Throw them in the trash. Then you look in the trash and you're like, there's some quarters in the trash. That's money,
so
but it's not really trash. I think I picked that out.
I tend to throw out a fair amount of stuff. Like it can be decent, you know, like I just moved and I'm like, do I need to throw out all this stuff? It's like, well, it's easier than moving it. So whoosh, give it to like people nearby, whatever. So yeah, I'll put Perkz in the trash. It definitely wasn't like full on trash, but even his third game, which was fine. I don't want to say it was bad, but like he had 21% kill participation while Sven, Vulcan, and Blabber just murdered everyone around him. So like I think it's still pretty clear they're not all on the same page exactly.
That was like the 0, 1, and 2 game, right? Yeah, when Sven had like 10 kills.
Yeah, Blabber had like 8 or something.
To me, this is like, you know, there's not a lot of wiggle room in this scale here. It's cash or it's trash.
Yeah, that's why I said trash.
So it's
point
trash. Of the game here.
It's trash for me because I think based on expectations, you know, of course he's joking, but the tweet, not going to die in the tournament. He's going to come in. He's got a smurf. Expectations were really high, right? Like most people thought Perkz was just going to massacre everyone from the word go. And we didn't get anything even close to that. We got a pretty bad game. I would say the Galio game was pretty good. And then the Zoe game was like, could that have been any mid later in the LCS? Yeah, probably. Probably could have been literally any one of the 10. Wouldn't have noticed. So to me, like based on me thinking, okay, he's going to slam everybody, this was trash.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, if you were going to label this cash, it would kind of be ridiculous because you're putting it up against $5 million of cash. And it certainly was not $5 million of cash. If it was under that category, it was probably like $2 or something. So that's going to be a trash for all 3 of us.
All right, NA talent week 1. We got a lot of young players. We got, you know, some rookies coming up, some people who've been around for a while improving. What do you think?
Cash money.
That's cash for me. You have to look no further than the freaking collegiate players. Everyone was like, this team, hard 10th, including all of us, by the way. That's one thing that we all agreed on. We're like, yep, they're going to be shit. Iconic came in, highest KDA of the tournament after the first 2 days, 25, smashing it with, Lillia compositions for the team. And even though they ended up losing even the second game, I thought they played it really well. As far as, you know, the gameplay coming in, a lot of the execution. And it wasn't just them. It was across the board, a lot of them too. So I'd say that's cash.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if we're lumping in the OPL prospects in here.
Yep.
They're in NA and they're talent.
NA resident.
All right, baby. I mean, FBI still looks incredible. I mean, under this category, I mean, there's a lot of people you can throw if they're like NA residents. I won't go that far, but like, like Tactical still looked really good. Some of the more known names as well. So there's the new crop of talents.
Was really good.
Yeah. So both new and old. Blabber was still incredible. Like I thought, you know, more or less every NA player looked pretty good to me.
All right, next one here. We got Fudge. What do you think, Mark?
This is also the C9 ones are hard. I would just the performance.
Yeah. I mean, you can justify based on what your expectations were or whatever, but Fudge, give it to me.
Probably trash.
It was definitely trash. What? You sound so sad, and you had to like debate over it.
Well, because like I mean, I know he's hyped up and stuff, but it is still the first.
Why is the tone so
games.
sad now? I went with for like 2 seconds, and Marcus all like,
I'm
"I
not
guess
sad.
it's
I'm contemplative. All right. I just. It's harder than
Turns
Perkz
out
me
that
because
Fudge is
there's not a
actually Mark's
$5 million
son.
contract on him. You know, it's a lot harder when it's a new player. I know he's
you were
not
all,
new,
you were
but
all happy before. Oh yeah, fuck this guy. He's trash. I hate him." but it's not Fudge, man. I mean, he came in talking a bunch of trash, so like we got to put it up there. It's not. This is nothing personal, you know. And it's not like you're trash forever. People are easily gonna bounce back in week 2.
It's week 1.
This is week 1, you know. Yeah, he came in talking a big game, so you got to put up big numbers to be able to get in the cash category.
Yeah, this for me was definitely trash. Fudge, I was like, he was my question mark. You know, I was the one who didn't put them first because I was kind of like unsure how he was going to look, and I feel somewhat reaffirmed in not putting them first place just because I didn't have the biggest expectations, but I would say I was still disappointed. I don't think he looked good in any of the 3 games. Even in the ones that they slammed, he was kind of like felt like the lone weak spot where they were kind of like patching it up a little bit, trying to help him out. I know there was some disparity in jungle difference, but like they had a Galio Camille game where he wasn't really going, you know. I don't think he was like awful by any means, but when I compare it over to like Alfari, who was supposed to be like their main competition, Alfari was stomping every game, and Fudge was kind of like needing to get bailed out a lot. He wasn't feeding, but he definitely wasn't impressive.
Right. I do want to say, very quickly though, that a number of people have already taken our power rankings and are like, "Ha! Look what happened week 1, idiots." I got some from TL people when they lost. I got it from some.
Yeah, I told you that was gonna happen.
I know, it's so funny. It's like
it's the end of spring power ranking.
Yeah, like everything. Like Azale, you can still be wrong. Don't start celebrating yet that you put C9 lower.
I'm not. I'm just saying that this
you got party,
made me feel vindicated.
Party favors going off. You're shooting.
Nobody
flares.
put EG number 1.
Yeah, absolute dumbos. Speaking of okay, next team. We actually
hold on. quick little addition here. Dive power rankings. Cash or trash? Looks like they were trash. Idiot.
Trash.
Yeah, very trash. Extremely trash.
There'll be 3 new talent on for your next episode of the Dive.
End of spring. End
That's
of
been
spring
marinating in
rankings.
the sun. It's terrible. Get that away from me. All right. We got Huhi next.
Cash. Cold hard cash. Probably the coldest and hardest of cash.
Yeah. Is he?
Keep going. Finish. No, let him keep going. Just let him keep talking.
No, I'm pivoting. Yeah, he looked really good. Him and FBI basically picked up exactly where they left off. I mean, him and Core JJ feel like 1-2 in the discussion for best bot lane in the league right now. I mean, like even when they squared off, you know, Core JJ and Tactical got the first blood, but then they used their range advantage, Huhi and FBI, to keep pressuring and worked better with their team and like pulling dives off.
And also their Olaf advantage.
Also their best jungler in the game advantage. Yeah, but I mean, it shows that they bounce back. I don't know. It was super fun. That was my favorite game of the weekend, easily.
Are they cash enough to be the best bot lane in the league?
No.
Vulcan and Sven looking pretty good too.
Yeah, I think it's all up in the air still.
Yeah, I think people just talking about the TL Golden Guardians bottom lanes in the conversation are kind of disingenuous. They're leaving the Cloud9's bottom side out.
Yeah, they're definitely looking good. All right, next one we got Huni.
Trash. There was a moment where you're looking at it and you're like, wait a second, look at that Gnar ultimate, countering, getting it into the wall. Is that cash? No, just kidding.
I mean, you need like the Men in Black mind wiper thing to forget the first 30 minutes that led up to that ultimate.
Well, it wasn't even just that game. It was the other Gnar game too, where he's just in bad spots. He's not respecting where the jungler was. It just felt like he was off in his own world in a lot of these games, and he did have some good moments, but yeah, it just didn't feel like he was coordinated well with the team. That one death where they like take Rift Herald and then like he's going forward to Meganar his opponent in a 1v1 against the Lillia jungle who just took Rift Herald, and they know that he's there and mid lane's missing, and then he dies, and it's like, oh well, who could have predicted that?
You know what it was? This is some Monopoly money that had gum on the back of it, and you're like, wait a second, that kind of looks like cash from afar. Ah, they got me again. It's fake.
It's got the hook on it. They keep pulling it back.
Impact.
Easy cash. He was the week 1 MVP. Impact. Of course he's cash.
Yeah. Big check right in front of your face. This is like the blown up one that you win after tournaments that you can't actually use. It's like, is this cash? Oh yeah, you could actually turn that sucker.
Don't compare Impact to that. Those tournament winnings are like, see it in 8 months. Impact showed up day 1 and started dominating. All right, he is like
tournament. You get your tournament buff.
Was he your vote for the MVP of the week as well?
Yep.
Yeah, all 3 unanimous.
Yeah.
All right, there you go. Best player.
Ever.
He seemed. Do you guys think it's fair to say that was the pickup that went like most under the radar compared to like actual value of it?
For sure.
Is that an overreaction too early?
I don't think so, because every time you talked about Impact, it was almost always within the context of getting replaced by Alfari. Like the fact that he went to EG wasn't even the news. It was like, well, he's off Team Liquid. So I think from that lens, it was like no one even cared that Impact went to EG, and now it's like, oh, he's still an absolute monster.
We said that on cast like during the first pop-off game, so like I definitely think that's true.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see, because I thought he was amazing. I thought his flanks were amazing, but he also did play 3 games of Renekton, which is seeming really, really strong right now. I'm going to be interested to see how he looks as he's pushed onto different champions, because I don't think that people are just going to keep giving him Renekton every single game. It's not going to happen. All right, let's talk a bit about the meta. We got kind of our first look at LCS in 2021. Obviously, we have 15 games under our belt now. I know, Mark, you were talking a lot about some frustrations with some builds. You want to start us off?
Sure. I mean, I just the Lillia builds in particular. The Moonstone Renewer has cropped up a little bit more in pro play than it has in solo queue, and I think that makes sense because there's a lot more like standoffish situations where you're fishing with your E and you can just like land it. And what it does is, because of the burn on all of her abilities from her passive, you get 2 procs of Moonstone Renewer every time you hit an ability, because it's while affecting champions in combat. So like throwing a heal on someone, you're not in combat, and like those kinds of things don't get procs of it. But all of the abilities are going to proc it. It's going to get 2 procs every single time, and it's just absolutely nuts the value you get. It spikes at 2,500 gold as opposed to 3,400 from the Leandries, so you can continue your build earlier. You'll usually be the first person with a mythic item if you go it, and like you can still go Leandry's Torment. Like Conavi, for example, in the same series went both builds based off what his team had. And like I had bit my tongue until Armau went it with the Cassiopeia, and there were 2 Leandry's Anguishes, which doesn't stack. And it like they had so much damage that game, and I was just losing my mind watching him like go this slow build path when you don't need it. But yeah. And then there's also the Staff of Flowing Waters thing, which Dardoch did on his Nidalee. I'm going to call that the bathwater build is my vote for the nickname for it. I know LS is pushing for Moonstaff. We'll see which build wins.
Bathwater sounds cooler to me.
Yeah, that's definitely more hip. Bathwater. Bathwater's big right now with the memers.
Yeah, that's why I liked it.
Dardoch posted a screenshot of healing done after that game, and he had 27,485 healing done. The next closest was Graves, 15K.
I will say though that like Leandry is really good with Lillia for the exact same reasons of the passive proccing it over and over on people. That's why you rack up such crazy damage numbers with it. So to me, the big point was that you already have a Leandry on your team.
And sometimes you just need actual
damage.
AP damage from the jungle, right? Because a lot of these teams, if you are going to go AD top, and for example, when we saw like Galio mid and you have an AD top and you have an AD bot, if your Lillia goes Moonstone Renewer, you don't really have a true magic damage threat. So then armor, I think, becomes a little bit too valuable. So I do think both are situational, but it seems like a cool build. And my guess is we're going to see more of it going forward because people are talking about it a lot. So at least it'll make people experiment. What did you guys think about some of the like must bans, right? Because we saw a few that kind of came through. So like Olaf had been kind of perm banned, got through a little bit. Akali got through once, I think maybe.
Yeah, I think
Yeah, and
CLG got
also it got through and didn't get picked
Mm,
a couple of times, and
yeah.
that was very surprising to me.
So what was the big like standouts for you guys then compared to expectations as far as pick ban?
I mean, it was mostly for me because I was watching a lot of LPL, the Jungle Pantheon, and then the games where Akali is actually just not even getting looked at. Those are the big surprises. But I was so hyped for Jungle Pantheon because I had been climbing, just abusing Ivern a whole bunch. So then when I started watching the LPL with the Gore Drinker Pantheons, I started using that, and it's just like, yeah, I get to kill people again. Oh my god, it's just the two most different types of play for champions. And I really wanted to see some come out in the LCS, but
You got 15 out of 15 bans though in LCS. 100% ban rate so far. Olaf was second highest, 13 out of 15.
No one wants to deal with that. I mean, I think some of those made sense. I was a little surprised. There were two things I said. Like the AD carry priority was a little weird because I felt like in LCK and LPL, AD carry was always taken in the first two positions or like first phase. And there's a little less of that and then it dropped to the second phase sometimes. You saw like Zaya and some other things. The other thing was Maokai support. I was a huge fan of it when it started coming out with Imperial Mandate, and it took a little bit to start showing up, but then Sword Art popped off on it. He had the second highest damage on his team. He had more damage than Jhin. So, like, I think people will start getting this in before the nerf comes. I forget when the nerf is heading for it, but either way, pro play is a little bit behind that, so you'll get even more time.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I was definitely expecting more MF because at least in solo queue, so many people are doing the like tier lethality comet build where you're just poking people out in lane and kind of winning lane through that, and then having the ultimate for the team fight. That is feeling like that is really kind of crushing it in solo queue, and it's definitely more popular in some of the other regions. We only got the one MF pick, and it did win, but only came through once. Wasn't really getting banned out either. It was just this Ven game. That he did have a really good game on.
Yeah, that wasn't too surprising to me though, because there are an excess of very good AD carry picks right now, and in LPL and LCK also the Aphelios, Jhin, Kai'Sa, super prominent too. So it's not like MF is crushing and dominating the pick bans in other leagues, and then there was a disproportionate amount. I feel like there actually are just quite good options.
Yeah, for sure. So besides that, I mean, nothing else felt like really super surprising, I guess, to me. It'll be interesting to see like if there's more continued divergence, I think, on some of the mythics and everything that are being built, or if people kind of could come to like a conclusion on like, okay, actually you just build this every time. Because it does seem like there are some differences in what people are building. If you look towards like things like even Alistar, right? Like sometimes people are going more of like a defensive thing and going for like a mythic. We have seen more of aggressive options. We've seen like Shirelias, we've seen Turbo Chem Tank. When we look at Renekton, we saw Alfari Rush play the Rune King, where like Impact was going mythic first every time. So that's kind of interesting to me. Like I'm gonna be curious to see if this is just like people are coming to a conclusion later on that like one is better than the other, or if that variance remains. Because to me, it's actually fun to see.
Yeah, like build diversity versus like just not optimized yet are two different things, and it's early enough in the season that it's hard to be like, which one is this?
I mean, it's to me, it's really just like pushing it to your second item or not, depending on if you have something that's non-mythic that you really want the ability for. And I don't think it's going to be people are like, yeah, we got to like push off our mythics for third, fourth items or to the end, or there's anything crazy like that. It's like set Dead Man's Plate is so insane on this champion. It was always so core on him because the move speed is everything. And so you can delay your mythic to get like a Dead Man's Plate for set, or Blade of the Ruined King for Renekton, because there's such crazy synergy between that champion and that item. And the mythic, you only lose out on one of the bonuses there. If you're getting it second, you only have to wait a little bit of time before you get the next bonus in. And if that synergy of a non-mythic item is better than your the mythic active or passive or whatever, go to town.
It is always interesting with support though, because it's like with top lane and jungle and whatever, you can be like, I'll push to my second item with support. You don't get a second item.
My second item.
Like you're completing your first item at like 20 minutes, right?
Yeah.
And then it's like then they're gonna maybe get like the upgraded Sightstone storage thing. I can never remember what that's called. But it's like you have your boots, you have your Sightstone, you have the upgraded little storage for Sightstone thing, and then you have your item, right? And it's like you're pretty much never getting to the final item, to like the next item. So it'll be interesting to see how that evolves. When Huhi did the Lulu pick and he just rushed Mikhail's, it felt like it actually really made sense. I really like that. But Moonstone Renewer and stuff can be pretty powerful too, right? So it's kind of interesting to see the variance there, and even just that pick in itself, I liked. I do think that while we're seeing so much of the engaged champions, I do still think that there are situations where you can slam lanes with enchanters, or even just get so much value by shutting down a pick, like having the point and click polymorph against something like Samira, who has this channel ultimate that like her whole kit is around, is so powerful, right? For the same reason that Lulu is always really good against Yi and Katarina, it was great there. So I'm hopeful that while I like seeing the engaged champions, I'm hopeful we'll see people be a little bit more clever, like who he was, I think, with this pick, and mix in some of the enchanters and stuff as well. Because I do think that there's opportunities to blast lanes, with things like Nami and stuff also. And you can do the adaptation that Huhi did, where you're going Guardian and you're going a bit of a more defensive rune setup to negate the chance of you just getting like 100 to 0 and all in.
Yeah, and those opportunities come up when you have engagers on jungle or top lane roles, definitely way more prolifically, because then that covers your possibilities for later.
All right, let's talk about Group A. So Group A is Liquid, 100 Thieves, TSM, all tied at 2-1 right now. Golden Guardians is 1-2, and CLG already down at 1-3. I believe they are already actually like locked out of this because they have played their 4 games, so they are last, because I think they lost to Golden Guardians ?
Yeah,
but anyway, I had seen that they were already locked out, so I'm not sure if that's 100% confirmed, but
it is, because they played all 4 games, and Golden Guardians already have 1 win, so best they could do would be to tie Golden Guardians at the bottom, and they lost the tiebreaker.
Okay, yeah, so they did in fact lose to Golden Guardians, so they are already locked out. Thoughts on this group?
I mean, starting at the top, the 3 2-1 teams, it's like one of these things is not like the others. One of these things just doesn't belong. TSM, despite being 2-1, is like the shakiest 2-1 you could imagine, where they did not look good in their loss, then they did not look good in their win, and relied on Speak of Baron steals against Golden Guardians of all teams. Not to throw too much shit at them, because they look a lot better than we expected, but like still, it's a group of young guys who are almost beating you. They just don't have the experience in a macro situation to close out the game. And then who was their other win?
I was going to say, they did look good when they were eliminating CLG from the tournament.
But I mean, even that was like this 35-minute grind fest a little bit, where it was like back and forth, and CLG had the lead for a period of time.
I don't remember it that way. I remember it being pretty one-sided for TSM.
Huni was down for like 40 CS in the top lane. They were like 2 or 3K gold behind for most of the game, if I remember.
Okay, so here's what it was.
32-minute win.
32-minute win, which is long in this meta a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, fair enough. But you consider like the team comp they're running running Huni on Ornn into Renekton. So they're knowingly going in, sacrificing top side. He sacrificed to the way harder than you got to sacrifice, starting out, tier build and sacrificing like, okay, I'll take this weak side and I'll take it all the way down to the
tier is so troll, because then he just sold off the tier anyway later. I mean,
yeah,
I guess it's just
I
really lane phase, but that didn't.
I really wanted like a twist at the end of that story, but yeah, I mean, I guess he just wanted it for more mana. It didn't work out very well, because like I'm saying, he sacrificed more than usual than Ornn has to usually sacrifice versus Renekton, because he was down almost 2k gold super early on, and a bunch of CS. But back to the point, they were playing a longer game style team comp with the Ornn sacrificing your early game to a Renekton top side. The thing to me that made it feel like it was a lot in their control, even though CLG did get the early lead with topside pressure into Rifttrail, giving you that money and having a gold lead, was TSM focusing on all the objectives, and they were able to get early dragon stacking versus the team that has stronger early power because they trade the bottom side stuff when they're giving up Rift Herald. And then once you stabilize the gold in the mid game with a lot of the picks, that actually Huni did a good job teleporting in on Ornn and finding long range ultimates for those picks. That made me feel more solid. I still agree with the overall point you're making, Mark, of Team Liquid 100 Thieves do look better, and especially because of TSM's first couple of game plans and drafts in the first two games, as well as the in-game play. This is a team we thought was going to take longer to come together, with Sword Art having this big role of overhauling the shot calling and direction of the team and the
people
players.
from all different teams.
Yeah.
So I mean, I think the CLG game, whatever you think about it, that was their best game by far, right? The Golden Guardian won. They were doomed if they didn't steal that Baron, and it was against Callista plus Smite, right? So there was like a good chance they don't steal that Baron. I think that was more of a Golden Guardians flub than a TSM like, wow, we did it, guys, on that Baron steal, because I felt like Golden Guardians probably could have just gone over the wall and killed off Spica and stopped any chance of that happening. They got slammed by 100 Thieves. So, yeah, they are definitely, I would say, on the lower end. But what you can say is at least it feels like it's a little bit of an upward trajectory, because they got trashed their first game. The second game was like close, but they scraped it back. Third game, they looked the best. So I'm feeling a little bit more positive on TSM now than I was at the start of the week. And yeah, I still expected them to be a team that would take more time to actually build up. I think the Maokai game, Mark, you talked about that a little bit earlier, but the Imperial Mandate Maokai, where he like out damaged his Jhin and was doing so much damage in that game. That was kind of like something cool to see from Sword Art, to see him have this really strong game where he had high impact, on a new build. So I think there are some positives there, but definitely it feels like, based on the games, the other two teams have looked better. 100 Thieves did have one really bad game, though, and so did Liquid, right? Liquid actually, I thought coming into the second day was looking like the best team, probably, based off their first game. They look really, really strong. But all these teams have had some blemishes, right? It's only EG that hasn't actually lost the game at this point.
Yeah. I think I think TL and 100 Thieves, who's better between the two, is an interesting conversation. Because yes, I mean 100 Thieves won the head-to-head, and their first game against C9 was also not against C9.
They beat TSM and TL, so they beat TSM, the other two teams that are 2-1.
Yeah, TSM's win was also super clean over them, where they just had this great usage of Lillia getting all over the map and stuff like that. So I was overall, I think, most impressed with 100 Thieves for some of those reasons. I think Someday is slotting in quite well to the team. It's not like they're tunneling on focusing on it. My cat's eating paper. Ignore me while I slide out of frame and keep talking. He isn't like, oh my god, 100% have to play around. Even when they had a draft that looked like they could have. I think it was like TF and something else, or maybe it was Galio. Yeah. They still like went bot and stuff like that, which I think actually shows some diversity of play style. So like all those things impressed me quite a bit out of them. And then their one loss was like
CLG, which is it's funny because they beat the two best teams. You're like, they're the best, okay. And then they lost to the worst team, right? Like it is a little bit interesting to see the disparity in the wins versus losses for 100 Thieves, right? Being the best teams, losing the worst team. At the same time, there's going to be some variance, I think, early on in a tournament like this. Teams are experimenting a bit. And I also don't think that like CLG is so far behind these top teams. I think they had a pretty bad entry into lock-in, but they also are playing with 2 subs. So I do expect them to get better as well.
Yeah.
Golden Guardians.
Golden Guardians. I don't know if there's anything else you want to throw onto TL before we move down to the top 3.
We could talk more about TL. I mean, I think still like they looked really good overall, despite the loss to 100 Thieves. I think 100 Thieves looks like a good team. I think TL, I'm feeling like pretty good about having them as the best team in the league. I think that they could definitely get there. There's going to be some growing pains for sure. And they did make some mistakes, but like Alfari looked so good to me in all the games. He was really, really showing that he knew how to not only create his own leads, but extend them. Even against Someday. Yes, they lost that game, but like he was looking pretty dominant against Someday. Yes, he like did have maybe a beneficial matchup, but Someday actually got to pick his answer into it, right? The Renekton was early pick. There was some bans towards Someday, so he was pushed down a little bit, but I don't think there's a lot of players in the league that would have been able to do that to Someday. You know, he was actually getting out to a big lead. He was proxying him. He was fairly far ahead. Someday had a great team fight later on and played well and didn't get like absolutely slammed. But I think in all 3 games, Alfari looked really, really good across, you know, multiple different champions, showed that he knew the matchups, knew how to punish. And his team isn't always even like really playing through him. It feels like oftentimes he's just kind of off on his own, creating a lead before the junglers even show up.
This is exactly what I expected from Alfari coming in. So this was one of the cases of like, all right, you got what you paid for, rather than.
But you paid for something really good. You
paid
for a Ferrari, and
you go to this steak dinner, and it doesn't let you down. You know, you leave satisfied.
Which, in comparison to the early games from some of the higher paid like Perkz is not the case. So I'm like, that's not something you should take for granted. Is instant. This is what I paid for as soon as he comes over with the team. I think that's one of the big points that's kind of surprising for Team Liquid, because Alfari had 2 days of practice. If you consider the day he immediately flew over and landed here as well for Team Liquid. And Santorin will be in for week 2. So I think that this team is gonna keep going up. They have been, as far as the practice though, practicing with Armeo for a large portion of the time, so Santorin will have a lot less, since they knew that they were going to be playing without him for a while. So I'll still be super happy once he gets here and he's playing with the team for week 2, and I expect Team Liquid to still be at the top.
Yeah, I mean, Armeo looked better than I thought he would have, but the third game he was definitely the standout like player that had some problems. That
I would say the second game, the one that they lost.
Oh, sorry, that was the second game. Yeah, whichever one they lost, were like,
one.
Yeah, when their bot side got snowballed and he wasn't really in position to protect them, and we talked about the build a little bit. Like all those things kind of contributed. I don't think Jensen played great that game, whereas like Oriana was fantastic. Like,
yeah,
I think
the game was bad.
Yeah, the team didn't play great as a whole, but I think those are the areas where like when Santorin shows up, you're like, hell yeah, don't worry about that anymore.
Yeah, I mean that was the game where TL's bot lane 2v2 kills 100 Thieves bot lane at level 1. But they didn't get a full reset off of it. And then 100 Thieves stacked the wave, pushed them in, Poser dives them. Armeo wasn't there. And they were able to continue to put pressure on like that, like multiple times, diving them, bringing Galio down. And it didn't feel like he was ever really there on the Lillia at the right time. And that can be difficult, right? Based on your positioning. But that did feel like a situation where it's like, okay, maybe this game is a bit on him. And Santorin, we obviously do have really high expectations for. He was so good, so consistent with FlyQuest. So, we do have to remember that TL was playing with a sub for sure. And there is potential for this team to look even better. But I do think even with the sub, Armeo played good and they looked really, really strong overall. Golden Guardians, to move down the list a little bit, I was really pleased with. Yes, they did actually kind of like throw their game against TSM, but their first game against CLG was really strong. The second game, I saw the promise. You're laughing about the throw, I guess, but like that, they had a solid foundation there, right? That was a game that was like one play at the bear, and if they do that better, they can VOD review that. They can see, okay, this is what we did wrong. This is where it went wrong. There were some issues, but like I think Niles, I was pretty happy with how he played overall. Iconic, I think, was amazing through both games on the Graves and Talia, especially looked really, really good. So there's like a lot of promise there, right? Even if they lose most of their games and they do end up being 10th, if they can be competitive and like show some interesting games and some exciting moments, that's like for me a success for Golden Guardians, because they are a team that had to completely rebuild with a limited budget, multiple players out of collegiate, people straight out of academy. So I'm pretty pleased with what I saw from Golden Guardians, despite the fact that they are sitting 1 and 2. What is their chuckles?
Am I the chuckler or is Kobe the chuckler?
Yeah, it's Kobe.
Yeah, that's why I was like,
I'm not making any noise. I think you definitely should be pleased with what you see from Golden Guardians. I was ecstatic with what we got. I really like the coaching staff on Golden Guardians, and man, the gameplay that they had coming out, especially in the first 2 games for this team, they were so well focused on their draft and the game plan that they had coming in off of that draft, like very specific things, you know, like the hard engage one, and then the dive one as well, and the way that they operated it for the early stages of the game. We were on the analyst desk and I was like, why does this team look so good, actually, versus the opponents that they're going for? This is the harder group coming into this. I think it was unanimous, where we were all saying Group A looks much more difficult than Group B, because of Team Liquid, 100 Thieves, and TSM coming into it. And then it kind of ended up playing out that way as well. But I just thought the Golden Guardians, like, you know, for the majority of even the game, the second game that they did lose with the Baron, we were building an analyst desk segment that was like, you know, super rah glory, like, oh my god, how these guys look so good, you know, look at this execution, and the, you know, the in-game leadership is even there for some of the ones where we're like, all right, they're putting 2 collegiate players with you know, some academy, and then Stixay's your veteran. There's definitely some question marks at the end, but Stixay played super well. All of the younger guys played super well. Iconic especially was a huge leader for them. The Barons, that's when I started smiling, though, because it was actually multiple ones. The first one was the biggest and the closest, and you're like, oh my god, like that's the hinge point. Then they got another one at the end where they get a pick to the 5v4 to go to the second Baron, and you're just looking at it and you're like, oh man, this one is doomed. And you give them more credit for that one because you're like, all right, you need to take lower percentage chance, you know, plays towards the end, try and make the comeback. But you could kind of see it crashing down as they were starting it out. You know, low health inside, everyone's scared of the Baron pit, like spreading out. Nobody's looking for the turn, and then they're just like, oh, okay, go for it. And, and I mean, like, you could tell in the back of their heads, everyone was like, oh man, this is gonna be rough.
I mean, even like the TL game, like, yeah, they were losing that game pretty handily already, with TL just mostly performing better. But like, once you got to that Baron situation where it's like, we got top inhib turret and Baron, and you got a dragon, and like they didn't really contest anything correctly. You know, it was like, okay, this is definitely a team of young players who need to figure out, you know, what they want to do. So overall, though, like that's what you want with a group of younger players, like that they're not getting hard dumpstered in lane, that they're going even, winning some early games, losing some early games, but still being in it. And then like if they don't know exactly how they want to close out these situations yet, like that's the part where let's go coaching staff and like let's go experience to come in and help out.
Yeah, I'm gonna be interested to see, like, you know, some of it's tough to know. Is it like, okay, is it like inexperience? Is it nerves? Is it like what's going on with some of the things? Because like, for example, in the Niles Camille game, you know, he had this really strong early game, and then he missed so many hook shots in like every team fight was like just barely short. And I'm like, is that just, you know, the collegiate players aren't reacting as well, so he's like not expecting people to like be dodging these as much and like backstepping and stuff, or is that nerves, or is that, you know, it's hard to know in those kind of situations. So hopefully some of their stuff can get a bit more ironed out. But really, overall, very pleased with them. CLG, to touch on them a little bit, it feels hard to really draw much of a conclusion because obviously they had a rough go, but they also had multiple subs. You know, so it doesn't really feel fair to like prejudge them too much.
Yes and no. I mean, like that's what we'd say, you know, public facing, to be like, yeah, we're optimistic, but like, come on, we're all a little bit like, yeah, CLG, why couldn't you come out stronger for us? Because a number of teams are having sub situations, or you know, like even with subs, like it's Golden Guardians, a lot of these players are coming fresh out of collegiate, and you're using Solo and Wiggly, or you know, Griffin now. Like these are not nobody players. They all started in the LCS. Maybe they haven't scrimmed a ton together or something, but like nobody has at this point. So I agree. Like I don't want this to be like the death knell for them any more than it was for C9 not instantly stomping, but that tinge of disappointment can't be like, I can't overlook that completely, because it's like, this is an org that's been struggling a lot recently, and to come out and be the first team eliminated is just like such a bad like feeling, a mood to have hanging over you,
especially when you went for all veterans. That's the part that hurts the most, I think, is that they weren't the ones with the rookie experiments. They're the ones with all the known quantities, right? With you some of the most games played in the LCS of anyone. So I agree with that, but I'm cautiously optimistic that things could get better for them. Because if they don't, it's gonna be a sad season.
It's gonna be sad, boys.
I just feel so bad for Broxa with like super big visa
Yeah.
issues again. Oh my goodness.
I would say the big bright spot for me was Turtle. He actually still looked really good to me.
Yeah.
He made a lot of big plays. Some of them, like once or twice, it didn't work out, like the flash in the bot lane when he was trying to finish off Sword Art, I think it was.
Yeah.
Like
Get
that's
exhausted.
a big, yeah, that was a big oopsie. But like he had a couple other plays that actually worked out quite well. So I think if Turtle can get going and Pobelter works out and Finn actually is on Solo's tier, like I know that sounds weird to compare them, but like Solo was one of the best top laners in the league last year. Like if Finn works out to be around that level, then maybe you actually can start putting some wins together.
Yeah. Turtle, I definitely was pleased with, but I think Turtle last year as well had probably one of the best years in a lot of years in his career, right? Like he was actually really good for FlyQuest, pretty much the entire year through. So on to Group B, looking over at the Group B standings. The big surprise, of course, EG undefeated, only team in the lock-in tournament that remains undefeated. Cloud9 2-1. Immortals and Dig are at 1-2, and FlyQuest has a goose egg at the bottom, but they've only played 2 games.
Yeah, I'm worried for FlyQuest already though. If we want to start this one from the bottom instead and switch it up a little.
Oh hey.
Because they didn't look like they got much going, and I do feel like they're feeling that loss of not having Jose Diodo pretty early on, because you can see a lot of areas where there's like a branch, and you could have seen an alternate reality going out this way. So I don't know about you guys, but it looks hard for them to climb out of the bottom, even though this is the group that has Immortals and Dig in it as well. With some of the, we were talking earlier about Cash or Trash NA talent. Some of those bigger performances that have come from these two teams as well.
Yeah, I mean, Licorice has been okay. Like the Fiora game into Camille was like fine, but they didn't like blow the game open by any means. And yeah, Jose Diodo, you're hoping like when he shows
jungle diffy that game though, no? 0-2-0 Nidalee, and Blabber's like just killing everyone everywhere on Kindred.
I mean, NXI is definitely the biggest. Oh, I'm getting ahead of myself. That's Immortals I'm thinking of, isn't it?
No, that's FlyQuest.
Okay.
NXI is FlyQuest. He's the sub for Jose Diodo.
Both of them have a jungler missing, and I forget sometimes which one's on which. Yeah, NXI has been a big liability. He was a really young player in Scouting Grounds this year, and I think he was on 100 Thieves next, if I remember correctly. And so like he is not LCS ready, to be blunt, but like not to shame him at all. Like he's just a developing player, and I don't think he was 100% ready, and kind of got taken advantage of by the Blabbers and the Dardocs of the world and this kind of stuff. So like I think I have hopes for this team when Jose Diodo, who's supposed to be kind of the other big signing, shows up.
The one thing I will say I was disappointed in was I had pretty high expectations for Diamond. I was actually really excited that he would get into the LCS and get to show some stuff. It's only 2 games, but I don't think he looked good in either game. It felt like on the Rel game, there was a few times where he's kind of like caught out or had, like wandering through the river and dying in a bad time. A few failed engages. On the Leona game, I feel like when you're playing that type of champion, you need to be decisive. There was one fight that really stood out to me where they were fighting over by Rift Herald, and Blabber, Blabber was basically just auto attacking him, and he's kind of just like walking slowly past Blabber, just continuing to get auto attacked. And it was like Blabber was holding his Q to try to dodge Zenith Blade, but Diamond didn't even try, right? And they moved all 5 people up to fight at this Rift Herald, and he didn't even throw a Zenith Blade before getting auto attacked solo by Blabber down to about 30 or 40%, and then they just disengaged because he was low. And it was like give me something, man. You need that killer instinct. Like you need to at least go for it, especially if you're going to play that style of champion. Like if you're the go button, if you are playing, and in that game he was, because it was Leona, Jhin, Orianna, Nidalee, and Fiora, right? So it's like he is the person who has to engage in that situation. So I guess I was a little bit disappointed that it felt like he wasn't playing with kind of that killer instinct, because I felt like when I watched him in Academy, he did play with that confidence. And I don't know if that just was like he felt like they were in a losing position, or it felt a little bit different playing in LCS for the first time kind of thing, like, moving up and being a starter. But I will say that I think NXI was a liability. I don't think he looked, LCS caliber. But I wasn't as happy with some of the C9A guys as I was kind of expecting to be.
Big agree. Moving up to Dig, a pleasant surprise, I think we can say. Unless Kobe, you had a final thought there.
You sound so confident, Mark.
I always do. Every time I want to, I just don't want to advance. If you know, Kobe, you were waiting.
No, I mean, on your statement of
no,
Dig,
I
like,
felt
a
decent.
pleasant surprise.
Well,
That
they
was
won their first game and then it went downhill kind of. So I think that's why he's got a little bit of a question mark in there.
And there are some individual players who looked good, even if they didn't win. Like Saligo has had some good performances. So like I think that was one of the bigger question marks. Was like, ooh, how is he gonna do? And he's been okay. And I think that's a big part of if their solo lanes can hold up, if this team has a chance. Because Dardoch looked pretty good, I would say. Afro looked fine. Like still question mark a little bit on Neo if he's gonna work out, but like. That's a big part if your two NA young solo laners aren't getting dumpstered in this league of imports.
Yeah. I actually really, really liked Fake Odd and Saligo both. And you can tell how much they've been working in academy and the improvements that they're showing here. Like the first Yone game, and everyone's popping off. It's coming right after the Perkz Yone game.
Yeah.
And so you immediately get your team, my team, Yone type of situation. But yeah, I definitely think it was another one of these positive notes, because we were all very trepidatious for a lot of these teams that did go for rebuilding strats around academy players or the collegiate players for Golden Guardians and stuff like that. And this was definitely one of the teams. Yeah, their game versus EG, they did kind of get outclassed in that one. But even at the beginning, for that one, there were some pretty good plays for them set up too.
Yeah, I mean, at least it feels like it's a building point, right? Because I do think Dardoch was actually quite good in pretty much every game. The EG one did feel like the one where their solo laners kind of had the most troubles, and to me that was like often like positioning based. Like Soligo actually had a good start to the game. I want to say it was like 3-0 at one point, but almost every team fight around the Dragon, it felt like Soligo was getting flanked or getting caught out by Chizuke and Impact, who were coordinating really well in that game to continually pick him off. And like almost every team fight started with Soligo dying on Zoe, right? And that's obviously a problem. Hopefully it's one that they can kind of work on. But in that Yone game, it wasn't just Soligo that was doing really well. I did think that he was coordinating well with Fake God in that one, to actually have some really good flanks themselves. So I think, yeah, cautiously optimistic for Dig. It didn't feel like depressing by any means. So I think it's like, even though they're 1-2, I'm sure they would have wanted to pick up some more wins. You can see how they could develop into a stronger team. And overall, like, I'm pretty happy with almost all the teams, right? Like I actually had a lot of fun watching over this weekend.
Yeah.
We didn't really have any teams that really stood out too much as like, okay, this is like can't be redeemed, because it was usually teams that are missing people or whatever that were having some of the bad games. So I'm pretty happy.
He's pretty happy with almost all the teams.
Who's letting you down?
Leaving that hanging there.
That little wiggle room.
I'm pretty well. I was kind of disappointed with FlyQuest, but it's also like they didn't have Jose Diodo. But
I was gonna say leave a comment below and who you think Papa Azale's disappointed in but won't say it. But now he's gone out there and done it.
Yeah. Well, I guess FlyQuest and CLG are the most disappointing, obviously. But
yeah.
Anyway, Immortals. We got Immortals moving up to another 1-2 team. How you guys feeling about them?
I feel better about Dig than Immortals right now. Just a little bit better about Dig. I think Immortals is like not having Xerxes feels really bad though when he's like the veteran stabilizing. Like imagine if you had Dig without Dardoch or something, like that would probably feel pretty miserable for them. So like that's a little why I felt worse watching their games, but also held back a little bit more knowing that more was coming with their lineup.
Yeah, they're the team too that they were practicing with at one point four subs. I was hearing from people that were screaming against them. So like this team is really not together yet, and the fact that they were still able to scrape together that win, does bode well. But this is again a lot of this tournament is very cautious takes because you know, we're at varying levels of actually having the team together and having you know, different amounts of practice and all this types of stuff. So I'm basically at the same stance with this team as I was at the beginning of the tournament, you know, before we even saw any of the games coming into it.
I mean, there's still a big question mark about how the players that they're missing are going to impact the team, but I was still relatively happy with the two constants in Revenge and Insanity. I think Revenge went up against some of the people
Gragas main
now. I like the idea of the flex to the Jace. It just didn't work out at all. But like,
I thought he actually was doing well in that game. I don't think
he was fine. I mean, they just never really set up pressure around the top side.
I mean, their bot lane was already doomed, right? Like, their bot lane was doomed 1 second into the game. He was beating
we just
Fudge
didn't get
the
to
whole
see
time.
It. I'm not blaming Revenge. I'm just saying, like, it had like a
you
good
said
start.
Nothing happened. It was up like 30 CS there.
There was Fudge had a greedy ass recall, gave over a kill he never had to give over, and then after that, you know, like Revenge did fine. I'm just saying it wasn't like Revenge was 1v9 in the game, but his team let him down.
No, but it just felt like a little bit unfair to Revenge because I actually felt like it went pretty well for him in that lane. But his bot lane got 2v2 killed twice by like 4 minutes. And then it's like, okay, what do you do now? Right? Like when he runs into, I think that was the MF game from Sven. And I just remember it's like, you know, lethality Jace, who Mark's are supposed to be terrified of, and Sven sees him is just like gale forcing and flashing on him and killing him instantly. It's like, okay, what do I do in this situation?
Blabber also tore Potluck apart a couple times too. So it was a doomed game. I thought Revenge looked good though. I think the weakest parts were clearly the subs. Insanity had another one of those like he almost did it plays in the early game where
he's almost really good.
Yeah, they're just every time you're like he almost killed him under turret in a 2v2 jungle mid skirmish.
Kobe groaning
2 for road.
I mean, as I was talking about the one where, you know, bottom lanes get 2v2 killed over and over, you're like, man, but what can we do? And then this game was the mid lane 2v2 versus poke comp with Zoe getting both kills after both members. First, you have Insanity flashing under the tower, barely out of range of that auto, so you're like, you know, that's a close play. But then after following it up too, Bollock's like, all right, me too, flashes it over one of them also.
That's solidarity. You got to respect that.
Jizuke, I mean, he was trying to pull something out of it. I do have to say Jizuke played it really well though. Because not everybody actually does turn around and double kill in that situation, even with the second flash going forward under the tower. But Jizuke did really well to pull those two. And then you're like, this is always
the rope
double kill at 3 minutes. They can, you know, just accelerating a poke comp is one of the worst feelings because you get to play hug your tower and dodge stuff super early on into the game.
Yeah, it's rough. All right, so we got C9 and EG sitting up at the top. We talked about C9 a little bit earlier. Overall, I would say I'm pretty happy with how C9 looked. You know, they had the bad game number 1. You know, even though we talked about like Perkz and Fudge, and we're like, oh well, maybe they're not having the greatest performances when we did the little cash or trash thing. Overall, C9 as a team dominated the next 2 games. Right. I think that they looked versatile. I think the fact that, like, I'm still fully bought in that Perkz is going to be one of the best, if not the best mid laner in the league. And the fact that in the next 2 games, he didn't really have to do that much for them to absolutely crush, I think does say something for this team. We saw how good Blabber was looking. We saw how good Vulcan and Sven were looking. They looked like, I think, the best bot lane out of everyone shown so far. You can argue that they didn't have to play against, you know, Core JJ and Huhi and FBI and whatnot. So that'll get shaken out. Yeah, that's fair, right? But at the very least, I think that their performance through these games was the best, right? And we'll have to see when they do actually match up against those guys how it does look. But they looked incredible. I think that, you know, C9 fans do have a lot to be excited about. I'm still worried a little bit about how Fudge is going to shake out, but he's the youngest player in the league, I believe. I know you were asking a question about that in the stats channel, Kobe, and I think that was the answer, was that Fudge is the youngest player in the entire league. He has not played in the LCS. So despite the fact that, you know, he had some big words and kind of a little bit of egg on his face because he didn't look that good, he can develop, right? And he was great in the academy. He's surrounded by a team that has a lot of experience. C9 has a great coaching staff. So if Fudge can improve throughout the split, I know that Perkz is going to be crushing it. I know that that's just going to happen. And if the other three are on par, then this is going to be an incredibly good team.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of these then Cloud9's next 2 games were so much better. Yeah, they went to playing Immortals and Dig after that, and like, oh, TSM's last game was their best game. Yeah, that was the one where they're against CLG, eliminating the first team from the tournament too. It definitely plays a part in it, but I agree for the takes on Cloud9. Yes, of course. We still stand by our end of spring standings. This is the beginning of the lock-in tournament. So there's still a lot that needs to get put together. I am seeing, though, where last episode when I was mentioning, some of the other coaches in the league were telling me they think Fudge has been overrated. I can see where that sentiment came from in these first few games. I still have full confidence. And I really want Fudge to continue to be a strong personality, continue to, making strong statements. Maybe take a breather after you take some losses and stuff.
Double down.
But I wanted to get back out there because it was really funny. Then at the end of the weekend, I had an interview with DeMonte after the 100 Thieves game, and he doesn't mention him by name, but he's like, one other thing. Some of the other rookies coming into the league.
Pretty cringe.
Probably keep your mouth shut. It's pretty cringe. And I was like, yeah, that's hilarious. Because then everybody's like, oh, I know who he's talking about. But like those things are really, they keep some fun, some spice to the league.
I mean,
and you have to have 2 parts for that to exist. If everybody's
just needs to double down on it. Just say, I didn't even have to try. I played with one.
Yeah, exactly.
Played with one hand and with 2 and 1.
I mean, the Lord of Trash Talk himself, Double Lift, defended him, his trash talk on stream. So I think he's got a free pass to keep going.
Perfect. All right, EG. Are they this good? Were they really underrated, or is it just a hot start in week 1 of lock-in and it doesn't really change your opinions?
Both.
Yeah, go ahead, Mark.
Oh no, you go.
Okay. They were definitely very underrated. We were all reacting to some of the public flame on the announcement video where I was like, why are people, flaming definitely this hard? Yes, that's the most underwhelming part of the announcement of the signing. But like people were just acting like they wanted to burn it all down now. And it's like, whoa, like relax a little bit. And he really has showed up, especially a lot of the Kaisa games. Super enjoyable watching him go in for these kills. Yes, Kaisa is in a state right now where I'm like, these 80 carries is really getting to their heads where they've got all these,
Gale forcing in. They're like,
yeah, we need to slap that nerf down real quick on that item. It's getting 30 seconds longer cooldown at least on the next patch. But that being said, he's played a lot of the 1v1s with Perkz and a lot of these scenarios quite well for the team. So I think that most people watching, that's where a lot of the concerns were. They were like, okay, there's 2 things with this lineup. Definitely in the bottom lane, and then Jizuke. Is this still like a coin we're flipping, or what's going on? We were seeing a lot of the positives, and that was one of the things where I was really happy to see him come back after being benched and all this stuff happening last split, and ending up last split with some of the worst stats in the entire league. He still got it. You still have the high point that people always point to with Jizuke. So this made me like really excited for this team. Those 2 things combined.
Yeah, I mean, even if the coin starts landing on the other side, at the very least, you have more pieces around him that will perform better in Ignar and Impact. Like those are the 2 other big signings, for this team that really showed up. I mean, Impact was the best top laner easily of the weekend. Yeah, we talked already about the fact it was Renekton. Yeah, probably best player, got MVP for us. But like, yes, it was a Renekton pick, but like what he showed on the champion is why I think we all gave him the award. Like his ability to find flanks, his timing on those flanks, always being in the right position, knowing how to coordinate with his team, like that kind of veteran stuff that's like hard to learn right when you get into the league. Like don't stand with your team, even though you're the front line, like get behind and find those angles, come from weird spots. Like he was so good about that. And Ignar is a great playmaker. And I think, Sven is happy to play with people who want to go in with him. Sven is like, he is a little like Jizuke, whereas like I'm gonna go for the same play because it's the right play in my mind, even if like my team isn't like always 100% with me. And so like when Sven's on bad teams, he looks terrible, but he actually is so good, and he just needs his team to back him up. Like his rough TSM days, you know, before they started, when they had Yellow Star, like people thought he looked terrible, but then next split he looks incredible. He was going for the same stuff largely, so that's why I think when EG was struggling last year, now they're looking good. Sven's popping off as well.
And to me too, just to add on real quickly on the Jizuke point, the thing that made me most happy was the Syndra game, where in moments where he does not have his flash, in moments where they do not have control of River, these are the moments where he's playing super well by avoiding the target on his back. There's so many windows where I was like, oh, they blew his flash. Jizuke is going to be a sitting duck right now on this Syndra. You know, everybody's looking to try and make the play, punish it. But there were a lot of things that kind of went by without action, and in which I was like, oh my God, he didn't die. Like he played a lot of the downtime moments really well, in addition to keeping up the pressure during the moments where he's strong. And I thought that was good in coordinating with the team.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I actually think all three of his games were really good. The Rise game, he was super active on the map, moving around, you know, finding plays. The Zoe game, he was popping off, albeit, yes, he was kind of gifted that
double kill 3 minutes,
mistake.
baby.
You know, he got a couple of kills. But you know, he played that very well, and he snowballed the lead well. The only real like blip on the radar, and I kind of actually really enjoyed seeing it, was when he just stood under the tower on Zoe, auto attacking it while the bot lane slowly walked up.
I forgot about that play.
Him, and then he just kept auto attacking the turret until he died. Like that one was like, I couldn't even understand like what the thought process was. That was just like, that was definitely a really, really funny one. But that was the only play, and then he immediately went back to owning it up in that game. So I kind of loved that. I kind of actually really enjoyed that. That was, he got a little bit of that Jizuke style in there.
It's still me. Yes, you're not.
God. Yeah, I'm also really happy for Deathly about like how much people were like, well, this would have been a good roster if they didn't get that idiot. And then he popped off really hard. And Deathly's #1 fan, or whatever that Reddit account is living life large right now.
All right, well, you love to see it. Now on to the Honda MVP section. Thank you, Honda, for supporting the dive. We love you. The MVP is most often the most impactful player, but today I want to ask you guys, what do you think is the most impactful role after week 1? You know, we've seen some LPL, we've seen some LCK, we got first week of lock-in. What's the best role in the game? I feel like we're probably going to be aligned, but we'll see.
We'll see. I actually
you want me to start? I'm going to just go with my own role here. Jungle feeling pretty good at the moment. I feel like there are just so many options with jungle right now. I was talking about like even just me with just choosing 2 champions, like Ivern and Pantheon. There's so many directions I could go. And for pro play a lot too. I think that the teams have been playing really well around it. So there's all this best role in league is usually a 2-role discussion. It's usually, all right, is jungle more OP right now, or is mid lane more OP right now? Because those are the 2 that have a lot of income and can roam around the entire map for the entire game, because you're positioned either mid or literally everywhere. With jungle. So there's only some times in the history of league where one of the other ones creeps up, and it's during things like Ardent Sensor meta, where you're just like, oh my God, these 80 carries with these busted buffs all over them.
Or the first 4 seasons of league.
Or like Juggernaut. Or what was the term where they reworked and we had like Mordekai's gameplay?
Juggernaut.
Yeah, Juggernaut. Like that, I had to block that out of my memory.
Yeah, I think it's jungle, and it doesn't even feel close to me right now. Like the fact that even if you compare to last year, just even as far as pro play, like there was times last year where the junglers were like the level of the supports and stuff and really struggling with experience. We had a lot of games where at least at some point the jungler is the highest level in the game, higher level than their solo laners, higher level than the opposing solo laners. You know, out farming sometimes they're even their own solo laners. They have more options than they've ever had before, because you're not now tied to building your jungle item and then play the game. I actually think that was a great change for the same reason that I loved that supports no longer had to go like upgrade your Sightstone all the way to max and then play the game. You know, like it gives you more item diversity. And then I think it allows for some of those really, really strong combinations like Gale Force Graves, and obviously he has the other builds. And we have, Moonstone Renewer and Leandries on Lillia, and these different ways that I think really amplify the strength that the champions already had, because they don't have to go for that just generic jungle item. Sure, there were some exceptions where it's like Hecarim skipped it and went Triforce, but generally speaking, everyone pretty much had to go for a jungle item. So I think jungle is incredibly strong right now, and at pro level, I think jungle is always really, really strong. Because the coordination aspect of it just makes the role better when people are playing for the jungler and setting up lanes for the jungler to dive and gank and do things. It feels like it's going to be a great year for good junglers.
Big agree. Big agree. Here's my +1 sign.
Sweet. That's the second use you've got out of that. Let's keep it going, Mark.
All
right.
Wait.
Thank you.
Great contribution here, Mark.
This is why they pay me to come on this show.
You're my Honda MVP for that contribution, Mark.
+1.
All right.
I'm the hype man. I'm like, yeah, Zale, that's a great point, man. I agree.
Yeah, I like that. See, that's better. That's a +1.
I'll try and be more.
Your second try. Your second try was better.
Yeah, good. Yeah.
Damn, I didn't think about it like that before, but when you say it like that, that makes a lot of sense.
This is good. I can get used to this. All right. We got some Twitter questions here. This one comes from Glenn. Sergey Von Games. He says, as a college student and somebody who is potentially interested in working in esports as an analyst, would having a certain major better my chances of getting a job? Your response will not make my decision, but I am interested in your take. I would say no. Maybe if it's like in broadcast or something, but to be honest, people just care about how good you are at it. And not really what your education background is. As far as like, if you're talking about being an analyst like on a broadcast or something, I've never once been asked like what my educational background is. I didn't go to university. I was in pro gaming straight out of high school and stuff. Like Kobe's engineering degree did not get him the job at Riot to cast video games. I think it matters zero.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's times when if I'm on staff and I'm hiring, I would consider it, and I had considered it. If I was hiring for a more numerical-oriented analyst position, there were times where I would be building spreadsheets and data entry, and so if you have any sort of data management background, if you know how to work databases, even like tangentially related things like economics or any profession that worked with numbers and spreadsheets and those kinds of things, I would like be more interested. But at the end of the day, to Azale's point, like I cared what you knew about League, and especially if you had a portfolio. I think a portfolio is the most important thing you can possibly have when you're applying some way to demonstrate like, hey, I already am providing value in this capacity. You don't need to level me up. Like I have ideas of my own and this kind of stuff that you can bring. Even if I think they're trash, like I'd rather see someone with like ideas and I can be like, oh no, not this one, but maybe this one kind of thing.
Yeah. I started this one out nodding no, because this is always the like general question of like, there's no degree that exists for esports or for this type of thing, and what people care about are your skills that you're bringing. But I would say that this is more nuanced, and that's always the general answer of like, nah, man, you could do whatever you want. There are things that you can use to get small bumps and to build those skills and focus them more clearly. Obviously, like, if you're spending your time, doing something completely unrelated, that's not going to give you a benefit or potentially increase your chance as the question is worded. So if you want a slight increase, there are little things that are always like, it's always nice to have, like Dash has an acting background. And that's not like, that doesn't get him the job. That doesn't deny other people job, but that's a nice little benefit that can add, a slight increase, because, there are moments like this is literally all on air. Like, it's all performance based. And like me having an engineering background, I never thought I would be in like a live performance type of scenario, but here we are. So like degrees don't make or break your job interview, but I would say there are small things.
To be fair to the person too said, does it give them better chances? And I would say, yeah, depending on what you're doing as well. Like if you have a sports psychology degree or some sort of like business, like some of those kinds of things can help if you're like applying more for a coach thing as well, if you're going to be working closer with players. And I don't think, Revenge having his pre-med thing, because he brought that up on air and everyone was memeing it. I think no one would give him a chance if he didn't have that,
Yeah. I mean, that's what you get out of it. You get to be able to drop it and try and gloat, and then everyone meme on you for it.
Yeah.
I mean,
pre-med, by the way.
I think at the end of the day, it's like having the degree doesn't do anything for you, but the skills that you learn during the
right. If you dropped out while studying that thing, you would probably have just as good a chance as if you actually completed it.
Or having just the actual certificate doesn't matter, but you may learn things along the way that could be very, very useful, like the acting or like broadcast stuff or whatever. But cool question. All right, we got the next one here. This one's from ArchitectofDeath. Ooh. Watching the dive law, right as ale, would you say TSM's acquisition of TSM Sword Art is still a good move? If they always lose their 2v2, but the shot calling wins 90% of their games. All right, so this is obviously very theoretical, but if I win 90% of my games, I don't care if one lane loses all the time, right? Like if he's just this mastermind shot caller and you are going to win 90% of your games always, well, you're probably going to win Worlds. Actually, you're for sure going to win Worlds, right? If you just win 90% of your games throughout the entire year.
Maybe he's
saying
I
would say yes.
90% of their wins come from the shot calling.
No, he says 90 calling. The shot calling wins 90% of their games.
I mean, obviously, this is the most hyperbolic question of all time. You always lose 2v2. It's literally impossible to win 2v2.
Yeah,
but then you win every game.
90%, but even 90% win rate throughout the entire year.
Yeah, duh. I would take that.
Because that means you win Worlds.
In the spirit of the question.
Is that the spirit of the question? Maybe I just answered the question perfectly. And he's like, what is this market are you talking about?
All right, for it. I'll drop it. I'm over it.
Now you can go.
+1. I agree. Great point, man.
I think, one, it's a little early to be like, oh my God, their bot lane sucks. But he's so good at shot calling. I think any sort of question like this is a little extreme, but I would say, depending on what else your roster has, it can be fine to have like a slightly weaker laning phase if it's going to pay off in other ways later in the game. There's a ton of supports over the course of League's history who have not been lane dominant, but have had great performances internationally with their other skills. Even in NA, even like a guy like Zazel when they made their run. I mean, he did have some good performances against, was it Afrika? But like, especially a support position, being able to make plays and shot call and these kinds of things is super valuable. So I think having a slightly weaker laning phase for the support position is probably one of the more acceptable places to have it.
All right. Seems like Kobe's good with that. We got the next one here from Scott Gluck. He says, okay, the dive law with the incorporation of OCE players into LCS, the new splitless format, and teams being willing to fully rebuild. Do you see an expansion to 12 teams as something feasible, possibly for the 2022 season?
Kobe, what do you think?
Mark can only plus
Great
one.
Answer, Mark. Plus one.
Mark can only a +1 other opinion. So
I literally disagreed with Azale last time. I -1.
+1, Mark.
I threw a negative multiplier on
I'll
top
write it out here for you, Mark.
Time.
If you don't draw it out for me, I'm not going to believe you. You get no credit.
All right, fine.
Piece of paper. Make another piece of paper.
Here you go, Mark. +1.
Thanks, man. That looks incredible. I feel so much better.
I would say it's definitely feasible. And again, like terminology there makes it super easy because it doesn't have to be guaranteed or anything. But I remember when we moved from 8 to 10 teams, and I was thinking, man, this is kind of a stretch. But coming right after week 1 of lock-in tournament, and we're seeing all these good performances from teams with multiple collegiate players, in addition to academy players, and all the variants coming out. Yeah, I say for sure. In another year, it'd be feasible to move to 12 teams. To predict that, I wouldn't predict it. I definitely would say at some point we'll probably expand. As we get more and more solidified with the teams that we have, and we keep seeing the bar kind of rising. And we keep seeing, these tournaments between amateur as well as academy, as well as LCS, and you get more crossover there. Those are super exciting to see, and you can have more, promotion style things. I'd say for sure.
-1, Kobe. You're a big dum-dum. It doesn't matter about
Let me
the
see
players.
the paper. Let me see the paper, Mark. No sign. I don't care.
That's what I think about you.
Okay. That works. I like prop comedy.
Yeah, thank you. I think So the player talent is obviously an
What's
important.
on that one, Mark?
Jesus Christ. It's obviously important to have like talent to actually put on these rosters, whether it's developmental or not. But a much bigger part of it is actually the ecosystem around it. And if like you can actually support a whole other org with like the fan bases that exist, is anyone going to care about this team? Are they going to be able to secure sponsorships, or is this just going to be some like nothing organization that has nothing to contribute to the scene? Because if that's the case, where they're losing money, you're stretching out resources even further that the league doesn't really have. Like, those are bigger concerns for me than like, am I going to want to watch the 12th place team? The answer is always no. There's always going to be worse teams and best teams, and like, I think that those kinds of things matter, but like what matters a lot more is the broader ecosystem.
You're the worst. I don't want to watch you, number 12.
All right. Well, that's all for this week. Thank you again, Honda, for making this episode possible. And remember, you can check us out on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Anchor.fm. And please go sub to the new LCS YouTube channel. It is youtube.com/LCS. That is where the dive is coming out now. If your friends are looking for the episodes, point them over to youtube.com/LCS. You can also send us all your questions on Twitter using the hashtag DiveLOL, the DiveLOL. You can tag us as well. And you can send us your voice messages on the Anchor.fm page. Simply go to Anchor.fm, search the dive, or you can Google it. Easy peasy. We'll be back next week after a little bit more action from the lock-in tournament. See you guys then.